Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. We are here to talk about programs in the UK. Today's programs will be specifically geared towards winter 2026. So know that there are more than just these available. There are some that only run in the summer or some that only run in the academic year, a full academic year. So these will just be programs that you are able to apply for the winter 2026 term. Really quickly, my name is Elise. I am one of the study abroad advisors here at CGIS. In my portfolio of programs, the vast majority of what I do is the UK, which is sort of an interesting full circle bit because when I was an undergraduate student here at U of M, I did my own study abroad to the UK through the CGIS office. So I have that firsthand student experience on the London scene, and I'm happy to share that with future students that are interested in going abroad. So moving right along, the first thing I wanted to talk about today is some of the differences and important things to note about the academic structure within the UK. So first, the timeline. So undergraduate degrees are typically only going to take students 3 years to complete in the UK, which is definitely a shorter timeline than the vast majority of students in the US. This often is a result of the next one, which is the fact that liberal arts really isn't a thing. So for most UK college students, they start taking classes in their major and they take nothing but classes in their major. So there aren't distribution type prerequisites that they're trying to fulfill, which, as you can imagine, cuts out a lot of required content and therefore speeds the degree process along. Um, it's important to know that because when you are looking at courses to take at different programs in the UK, a student that is someone in your major may have substantially more background knowledge in the subject area than you will. And so you want to make sure that you're only taking upper level classes in subject areas that you feel confident you could handle. Because, for instance, I was a psychology major here at U of M in undergrad, and by the time I was entering my junior year here, I think I had 4 psych classes under my belt, which was fine. I was progressing right along where I needed to be. But by your third year of school in the UK, someone who's a psychology major would probably have more like 10 to 12 courses under their belt of nothing but psychology. So just keep that in mind as you go about selecting courses. Lastly, I did want to focus on the class structure itself. There is a much, much heavier focus on self-directed study. So it requires a very high level of reading and critical analysis, just overall a lot more independence than the US structure sometimes requires. Part of this is because the entire grade for the course will often be made up of 1, maybe 2 assessments. Those could be papers, projects, exams, but in general, it's only a handful at most of sort of things that are actually being graded. There's really not homework very often, and there's no, attendance or participation points. You're still expected to attend, and if you don't attend class, you can still fail, but you don't actually earn points towards your grade total for attendance. Additionally, there's seems to be just in general students experience that there's a lot less in class time compared to what you see in the US, and a lot more reading that is done outside of the classroom. So for some students, this change of pace is great. They love it. They're super excited about it. For some students, it can be a bit of a hard adjustment. And that it partially is because there isn't a whole lot of structure built into it itself. There aren't, without there being like quizzes and projects and homework, there's not predetermined checkpoints along the way built into the curriculum to make sure that you're understanding the core content. So it can be a little frustrating for some students. Plenty of our students do just fine with it, but it is an important difference that I want you to be aware of as you start looking at UK programs. Some other things to note is that in the UK, they don't actually call them courses, they call them modules. So instead of there being a course catalog that you're looking through for what you're interested in taking for the term, it's actually the module catalog. Um, I know it's a little different, but knowing the lingo can matter. Additionally, the credit system in the UK is different than in the US. So a course there typically will be about 15 credits. I know that sounds outrageous for us for a single course to be that much, but the conversion ends up being about 15 UK credits equals 4 U of M credits. And so the typical course load for a UK student in a single fall or winter term is generally about 60 credits, which usually breaks down to be 4 classes at 15 credits each, which would translate to in the U of M system as 4 4-credit classes each, meaning most often students are taking about the equivalent of 16 credits worth. You can take just 3 modules and be at 45 credits. They consider that underloading oftentimes in the UK. That equals 12 U of M credits, which is the minimum that you need to be taking in order to still be considered full-time. So that is the lowest you could go in your study abroad curriculum. The other thing is that the grading scale looks very different. So a 70 mark on your class is equal to an A or higher in the UK grading scale. This does not mean that a 70%, like in the US, like a C equivalent of work gets you an A there. It means that they are much, much harder graders. And in general, you will tend to get marked down more than you are used to. And a 70 mark is their A equivalent. I did want to point out that I have this link here that shows, if you click on it, it goes to a info sheet that I made that goes into this a little bit in more detail that you can check out. So feel free to take a look, and I will drop this into the chat as well so that you all can review that at your leisure. So the next thing, we'll talk a little bit about the different program types. So we'll go over term length, competitive versus non-competitive, exchange versus non-exchange, and provider versus university direct. So for term length, study abroad can be for a single semester or it can be for the entire academic year. The traditional UK academic calendar doesn't always align very well with the US. For instance, traditionally the vast majority of schools for fall term, UK students are taking their exams after they return from a Christmas break in January, which obviously wouldn't work for our students who need to already be back on campus and starting the new semester after they return from Christmas break. So some UK schools have shifted their calendars back to better align with the US. So there are some programs we offer that do have a fall option, but the majority do not, and that is the reason why. The other thing to be aware of is that winter programs often will run through the end of May. Some even run into the beginning of June. So one thing that comes up a lot is there are students that are planning on doing internships for the summer following their study abroad. That's fine, but be aware that oftentimes a lot of those internships will require you to start the 1st of June or sometime very close around there. And you cannot leave the study abroad program early in order to get to that internship. Part of the reason is that you may still have exams going all the way through to that final date. And you typically in the UK do not know when your exams will be during the month-and-a-half long exam period until most of the way through the term. So typically not till the end of February or into March will you have been sent out the timetables for that. So my advice to students is to make sure that you are being conscientious when it comes to the timing of things, and that you are looking at programs that will wrap up in time for you to be able to get to your internship without any issue. The UK is not inclined to make exceptions for students. And in general, the attitude is sort of you're not special. And it's not like they don't respect you or they don't think that you're intelligent. It's that they don't think that your particular circumstances warrant granting you an exception compared to someone else. So they are not willing in most instances to make any type of accommodations to do early exams or anything like that. The next thing to note is competitive versus non-competitive. So some programs have an extremely rigorous eligibility requirement and or just a very limited number of spots available. And so you are oftentimes competing for your spot with students all around the world. Um, it's not easy for me to give an acceptance rate for those programs, oftentimes because it changes so much year to year. And oftentimes I'm only aware of how many of our students go each year. I don't have the total numbers at my disposal, so I can't unfortunately provide that. So that's competitive programs. Non-competitive programs indicate historically that as long as an applicant meets the minimum eligibility criteria, so the minimum GPA that you need, the year in school, and there's no recent disciplinary or academic red flags in your record, it is incredibly likely that you will be accepted to the program. We are never the ones making the final admissions decisions. It's always the partner institution, so we can't use the word guaranteed, but it is very, very likely that you will be able to do so. One important thing to note is that competitiveness of a program does not indicate the quality of the program. There are some schools that just prioritize having a lot more room for international study abroad students than others. And there are programs that are fantastic, high quality programs that are ranked in, top scores that fall under both competitive and non-competitive. For instance, we have programs that are in the Russell group that are under our competitive banner and our non-competitive. The Russell group is oftentimes equated to like the Ivy Leagues of the UK. It's a group of institutions that are very research intensive. They're known for high quality research output and academic reputation. So those, you're talking about the difference between like Michigan and Duke and Cornell and Yale and Penn State. Like they're all great schools. They just all offer different things. And so you'll want to look and find the best fit for you. Also, we're talking exchange versus non-exchange. So for some universities, we have an institutional agreement with them. And basically it says we agree to exchange X number of our students with you every year if you take, and we'll take Y number of your students in exchange. So for the programs where there is an exchange option, if you choose to apply as an exchange student, you will pay the tuition of your home university while you attend courses at the host university. So you will still pay whatever you would normally be paying for a U of M tuition rate. You'll still pay U of M tuition to U of M for the term, even though you're taking classes abroad. For some exchange agreements, there's other stipulations, like students can only study under certain departments or other things. Those details are always included in the academic section of the mCompass brochure pages for the programs, and you're always welcome to reach out to me if you have any questions as well. Lastly, before we dive into the programs, I want to talk provider versus university direct. So providers are third-party organizations that create or facilitate study abroad programs. They're sort of used in either one of two capacities. So one is they can be used for university programs. In those instances, they act as a liaison between our students and the university that's abroad. So they coordinate things like housing and your course registration and lots of other things like that. In the other capacity is when providers create and run their own proprietary programs. And so students that go on provider programs like that are being taught courses by the provider's faculty out of the provider's educational center on site. So there isn't a university that's actually attached to it in the traditional sense. So university direct programs are where students just enroll directly with the partner institution abroad. There's no middleman in between. And that is the vast majority of our UK programs. But there are some that we have that are run through a provider. Sometimes provider programs can be great for certain students because they offer another layer of support because there's a dedicated staff working to assist those students on top of what you get from our office and from the university. So it can be a potentially more stress-free experience. So that's just something to consider. Um, and then just in general, the different factors that I think it's important for students to think about when they're deciding on what program is the best fit for them. Oftentimes they sort of fall under these four general themes. So the first is housing. So I, encourage students to think about, do you want to, do you not want to have to worry about finding housing in London? Because there are some programs where the housing is guaranteed, or very likely to be guaranteed. Or are you really set on having independent housing that you find for yourself so you can live with particular people in a particular area? Because there are some programs where housing is not guaranteed. And the CGIS housing policy is that if housing is guaranteed, students are required to take it. If housing is not guaranteed, then students are able to find their own independent housing potentially. So that's one thing to consider. Another thing is the on-site support. So I mentioned, provider programs often give that extra layer of support. So they may offer more guidance and help you coordinate things, make it potentially a less stressful experience. But if you feel confident and comfortable in handling things very proactively and independently, then, you can definitely look at alternative programs and maybe a provider one isn't necessary for you. The next is course offering. So do you have specific degree requirements that you're trying to fulfill for your major or minor or distribution? And does the program that you're looking at offer those specific things? Or do you want to be able to take a wide variety of courses across multiple departments? And if so, are there any restrictions about that? Additionally, the final one is thinking about cost. So what's your budget? Some of the UK programs can be somewhat expensive. And so there definitely is a price difference between different programs. And so if you have concerns about the cost, that's definitely something to consider. Also, do you have any grants or scholarships that require you to pay U of M tuition? The vast majority don't, but there are some financial aid that does require you to only be enrolled in U of M classes, like the GI Bill, for instance. And so if that's the case, then you may need to consider an exchange program where that's what you'll still be paying. But please know that for the vast majority of aid that most students receive, it can be applied regardless of if you're paying U of M tuition or the institution abroad's tuition. And you'll want to consult with the Office of Financial Aid, specifically their study abroad team, to know for sure. Okay. So moving into our London programs, there are 5 options for the winter term. Computer Science, Psychology, and Humanities in London, King's College London, Queen Mary University of London, University College London, and the University of Westminster. I wanted to sort of give a visual because this is the most amount of programs that we have in a single city. And so sort of helping students visualize where everything is at. I do also have the London School of Economics on here because we have students that are there for the entire academic year. It's only offered for the academic year. So they would still be U of M students in London with you, but you can't apply for just the winter term. So you can see most of them tend to be sort of in the western central part of London. Queen Mary is a little more off on the east side of London. And we'll talk a bit about that. But generally, the main touristy areas, you can see Buckingham Palace is over here. You've got Big Ben, Tate Modern Museum, the Tower of London is over here. You've got Tower Bridge. So all of this is relatively close, and the public transportation system in London absolutely rocks. And so it is super easy to get to any of these things. Even from Queen Mary on a map, it looks like it might be a little far, out there compared to all the others, but it's seriously only like a 15 to 20-minute tube ride to get into any of these areas from Queen Mary. So it's not bad at all. Um, oh, so so the first program we'll talk about is the Computer Science, Psychology, and Humanities in London. This is one of the proprietary programs by IFSA Butler, the provider. Some quick facts about it. So IFSA is a nonprofit that was originally founded through Butler University. They deliver study abroad programs in 18 countries around the world. We use them for a number of programs across a number of different countries in our office. So we definitely know and work with them regularly. If you go on this program, you'll be taking classes at their program center in Mayfair, which these are pictures of. So this is the outside, one of the classrooms, and then one of the main like kitchen sort of gathering spaces for students. There's we highlight that there's computer science and psychology courses because those are 2 really large majors on our campus, and this program does offer those. But there are others as well, things like business, Black history, public health. And another cool thing about this program is that it does have an option for directed research. So you can do research under the supervision of a faculty member. It's a one-on-one sort of scenario. There's not necessarily the opportunity to do like intensive lab work, but you can still come up with some interesting research projects that allow you to do a deep dive into a topic of your choice. And that'll be something that you would be able to add to your resume as well. One thing to note too is that this program, because it's done through a provider, the provider really incorporates a lot of cohort activities and cultural excursions. It's sort of just baked into the program structure. So there'll be day trips to different places in the UK. There'll be like London activities. Like I know one thing they do oftentimes is like a Great British Bake Off experience, or they go and tour like the Harry Potter studios, other things like that. So there's lots of different stuff, but that's very built into it. Some things to note, the deadline is September 15th. The minimum GPA required is a 2.0. Sophomores and up are welcome to apply. And then the housing is guaranteed by the provider. If you go on this program, you'll be staying in IFSA-owned student housing, which are these single room flats. They're super nice. I was just there in October, and they are very, very nice. They're fully furnished with a private bathroom, and then there's common living spaces with like kitchen, study spaces, hangouts, a cafe, game rooms, a bunch of things. So this program, again, it's available for the fall or the winter. And if you are a computer science student, you can get computer science credit from the College of Engineering, the EECS requirements on here. The next school we'll talk about is King's College London. So the terms available are for the academic year or just for the winter. So there's not a fall option for this program. Um, it was quick facts. It was founded in 1829, and for each of the sort of slides moving forward, I've tried to give a couple different rankings because I know for some students that really matters. But I also think it's important to show that depending on who is ranking it and what their rankings are based off of, those rankings can change. My understanding is that U.S. News tends to value in higher regard things about like research opportunities and those types of things, while the Guardian's ranking system tends to be more about like student experience, graduation rates, and employment post-graduation. Um, so it's definitely a top-ranked school. It is part of the Russell Group. Its student body is about 33,000 students. Um, it has three main campuses. Here's sort of a map to show you a little bit of where some of those locations are. Um, the reputation it has is particularly distinguished in the humanities, law, sciences, and social sciences. Um, this is one of our competitive programs. So just keep that in mind. There is an exchange option that is available as well for this. So you could potentially apply to be an exchange student. There are a limited number of exchange spots every year. So we can't accept every single student sometimes, depending on how many apply as exchange students, but it is an option. There's an early deadline for this one of August 22nd. The GPA requirement is a 3.3 minimum, and it does require a letter of recommendation when you apply. There are some department restrictions for this program for study abroad students. One of the big ones I want to mention is that for psychology, you can only take psych courses if you go as a full academic year student, not just for the winter. So you will not have access to psych courses. And then film studies and computer science are only available to exchange students. And even then, there are some more specifics that you're going to want to look into for that. Housing is not guaranteed for this program. We encourage you to apply for the university housing if at all possible, but it is very limited availability for the winter semester in particular. So there is definitely a chance that you will have to find your own independent housing. If you want to try for the university housing, you just need to apply as soon as possible once you get your acceptance. Next up, we have Queen Mary, University of London. This program, you can go for the academic year, fall or winter. So here's some of the rankings for that. Queen Mary is also part of the Russell Group. It is the only London-based university with its own self-contained campus. So in many instances, the typical university setting for London schools is sort of more like an NYU situation where there's a lot of city mixed in, and there might be like a couple buildings here on this small part that's considered a campus, but then like 4 or 5 blocks away, there's another small thing. Queen Mary, everything is self-contained, so it's a little bit more like a traditional US college campus feel. In order to have been able to achieve that, have the land and area to do that, it does impact the location slightly. So Queen Mary is in what is considered the East End of London. That's the neighborhood. So it's slightly more removed from central London. But everything, all of your classes, all of the buildings, all of the housing for university housing is all right there. Whereas oftentimes with the other universities, you've got, your academic clusters of things, but then your housing might be in a completely different neighborhood, anywhere from 25 to 45 minutes away. So it's sort of a toss-up. It depends what you're looking for, but that's one of those big differences with Queen Mary. They also built into their sort of code as a university is a commitment to ensuring that any student, regardless of background, can succeed. So they're very much diverse in terms of socioeconomic status and ethnicity, and there are a ton of different nationalities represented as well, with a student body of about 33,000. Some things to note. So as I mentioned, that location is a little different than some of the others. There is an internship option available for this program. So if that is something you are interested in doing alongside your studies during the winter, this would be a great program opportunity for that. The deadline for this program is September 15th. It does require one letter of recommendation to apply, and the GPA minimum is a 3.0. For housing for this program, it's not guaranteed, but it is highly likely that you will be able to get it. The only students in recent years that have not gotten housing, it's because they have waited until the very last minute or completely missed the window to apply for university housing. And in those instances, they've been put on a wait list. So as long as you are staying on top of things and applying, early on, the chances of you getting housing is incredibly high. All the rooms are self-catered single rooms. And so it's a great option again, because it's right there in that campus, everything's together. The next one is University College London. This program is only available for the academic year in the winter. There is no fall option. This program is, again, part of the Russell Group. It has a little bit larger of a student body with about 51,000 students. It's a very multidisciplinary range program. So they group their different academics across what they call 11 faculties. So that's what these are listed here. Some things to note for this program: it is competitive. So there are a limited number of spots available. The deadline is early, just like for King's College London. One very unique thing about this program is that students, when they apply, are not applying just to a specific, or they're not applying to like the general admissions office, you're applying to a specific department. And so when you apply, the capacity for that particular department to take on students during that particular term impacts the acceptance rates. And it also, whatever department that you are applying to, you're required to take 50% of your courses within that home department. Because of that, the department you apply to should only be really one that is either your major or minor. And so you'll want to make sure that you're being very cognizant about that. The minimum GPA is a 3.3, although some majors may require a 3.7, so you do need to check with that particular department. This one is only for juniors and up, and it does require a letter of academic reference. The other thing is there are a lot of department restrictions with this program. Again, please look at the academics tab on the mCompass brochure page for this program. But there are a number of departments that are not open to non-exchange students. And there are a ton that have what they consider limited capacity, meaning that they may not be able to take on very many of those students to begin with, and there may be limited course offerings for those students that they do take on. Housing is not guaranteed. Again, same thing with King's College London. We highly encourage you to apply for those university housing options, but it is very limited, so you would need to apply as soon as possible. One thing I do want to say about this program too is that in general, this program requires potentially some of the highest degree of independence as a student. UCL has a reputation for just being very, very hands-off with study abroad students. And so you have to figure out a lot of things for yourself because they don't communicate or send a lot of reminders and other things. So there has definitely been some frustration from students who didn't fully anticipate that. So I just wanted to put that out there and make students aware. The last program in London is the University of Westminster. It was originally founded as the Polytechnic Institution, but it became the University of Westminster in 1992. It has a 22,000 student body. It's diverse with extensive business and research options. It's spread across 4 campuses, 3 that are in central London and 1 that is in northwest London. This program is a provider program. So IFSA Butler, again, acts as sort of an intermediary between our students and the University of Westminster. They help coordinate your classes, your housing, all of that. For this program, there is an internship option available through IFSA. So again, if you are hoping to do that alongside your studies, this could be a great option for that. The deadline to apply is September 15th. The minimum GPA is a 2.7. And the housing is guaranteed by the provider. So it's coordinated by IFSA. You'll rank your housing preference and they try to give you your top choice. It's either going to be University of Westminster student residences, or it'll be the IFSA-owned student housing that I mentioned for the computer science, psychology, and humanities program in London. There may be some additional charges if you go with the IFSA-owned housing instead of the Westminster one, but that's all explained in the program brochure. So that covers all of the programs in London, but we do have some programs in the greater UK outside of London. The 2 for the winter term that we'll be talking about are the University of St. Andrews, which is in Scotland, and the University of Sussex, which is in Brighton, which is still in England. It's about an hour south of London on the coast. So the University of St. Andrews, you can go for the full academic year, fall or winter. It is a very, very old institution. It is the oldest institution in Scotland, and it's the 3rd oldest university in the English-speaking world. And so as you can see, like there are some very old architectural buildings and aspects to it. It's renowned for its really unique and long-standing history and university traditions that students still uphold today. There are departments spread across different academic schools, but they always fall under the one of 4 faculties. You only have access to the arts, the science, and divinity. So there's definitely a lot of great options for this program. It is in a much smaller town than a big city like London. But for some students, that can be a much more enriching experience because it provides for a lot more cultural opportunities. You get to know the place really well, and it is stunning. It's beautiful. It's on the coast. So I think more students should consider it. Some things to note. So the deadline for this one is September 15th. It is a minimum 3.2 GPA, and there is a letter of rec that is required. The housing is guaranteed as long as you apply by their accommodation deadline. And there's some different types of housing options as well. So this is St. Andrews. It is one of our non-competitive programs. So again, as long as you meet those minimum eligibility criteria, you have a very high chance of getting in. And then finally, we have the University of Sussex. So for the University of Sussex, you can go for either the entire academic year or the winter term. It is, again, in the city of Brighton, which is about an hour south of London, and it is on the coast. So the ocean is literally right there. This is the famous Brighton Pier. And so you get sort of a beach town right alongside the college campus. And also, it's the only English university that exists within a national park. So around the campus is like hundreds of acres of like walking paths and nature. So it's a really beautiful spot. It's a little smaller on the side for student body numbers, but it's pretty diverse. Um, and there's a lot of really cool local businesses and art stuff that goes on in Brighton. Um, so some things to note for Sussex is that there is an exchange option that is available for this one. The deadline to apply is September 15th. This is one of our non-competitive programs. The minimum GPA is a 2.8. However, if your GPA is lower than that, you can potentially still apply. You would just need to get an academic letter of recommendation to add as supplemental material to your application. Housing is not guaranteed, but again, it is highly likely that you will be able to get it. We have not had any students have any issues with acquiring it. And all of the accommodations, while there's different types of accommodations, they're all self-catered. However, there are also, some dining halls and other things on the campus. So that is all of the different program options for the winter. Some key takeaways I just want to sort of reiterate is that the UK programs in the UK are great for students who are very independent in nature, are looking for some flexibility with the different course options they can take if you're looking for specific degree requirements or want to be able to take courses across a wide variety of subject areas. It can be a really great fit. Also, if you want an intercultural experience without major language barriers, they speak English in the UK, so that can be a great benefit. One thing I will say is that a lot of times, because these are, for the most part, university study programs, and you're just enrolling in the university, there may not be quite as much cultural components, sort of built into the program itself as some other program locations offer. So just keep that in mind, that if you really wanted to get a really in-depth experience with the home culture there, you'll probably have to do a little bit more of that work for yourself. Um, it is a good idea to apply to a non-competitive backup option if you do choose to apply to one of the two competitive options. Again, the two competitive programs for the winter are King's College London and University College London. You are only able to apply to one competitive program and one non-competitive program, and the competitive program must be ranked as your first choice. Otherwise, we will not review it. If your first choice program is a non-competitive program, then that is the only application you will be putting in. And again, that's because you have such a high chance of getting in if you meet those eligibility criteria. So there's really no reason for you to put in a second application or for us to have to review it. So a maximum of 2 apps per application cycle, and that is only if the first choice is competitive. But just in general, there are a lot of great options available both in London and in the greater UK. You are welcome to reach out and ask me any questions. The QR code that you see on your screen takes you to a spreadsheet that I made that shows all of the different UK options to try to help make it a little easier to compare things. But yeah, thank you for sticking with me. I hope that this presentation has been informative, and please feel free to reach out with any other questions.